Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira, get another one. Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Paramahansa, Parivajikacharya, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 14th day of April 2021 in SanDiego, a reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're on 433, page 433 for those who have a book. And it is in chapter 10 entitled The Opulence of the Absolute, text number 11. Tesham evanukam patham aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami atmabhavasto jnanadipena Basvata Teshamevanukampatham ahamangyanajam tamaha nashayamyatma bhavasto jnanadipena bhasvata 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 Teshamevanukampatham ahamangyanajam tamaha nashayamyatma bhavasto jnanadipena bhasvata. Go ahead, Boo. Teshamevanukampatham ahamangyanajam tamaha nashayamyatma bhavasto jnanadipena bhasvata. Go ahead. Teshamevanukampatham ahamagyanajam tamaha nashayamyatma bhavasto jnanadipena bhasvata. Ladies, want to try? No? Go ahead. Teshamevanukampatham ahamagyanajam tamaha jnanadipena bhavasto jnanadipena bhasvata. All right, I'll just read through the word by word myself. Tesham, for them, eva, certainly, anukampa, artam, to show special mercy. Aham, I, agyanajam, due to ignorance, tamaha, darkness, nashayami, dispel, atma bhava, within their hearts, staha, situated, jnana, of knowledge, dipena, with the lamp, bhasvata, glowing. Translation. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, to show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. Purport. When Lord Chaitanya was in Benares promulgating the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, thousands of people were following him. Prakashananda Saraswati, a very influential and learned scholar in Benares at that time, derided Lord Chaitanya for being a sentimentalist. Sometimes Mayavadi philosophers criticize the devotees because they think that most of the devotees are in the darkness of ignorance and are philosophically naive sentimentalists. Actually, that is not the fact. There are very, very learned scholars who have put forward the philosophy of devotion. But even if a devotee does not take advantage of their literatures or of his spiritual master, if he is sincere in his devotional service, he is helped by Krishna himself within his heart. So the sincere devotee, engaged in Krishna consciousness, cannot be without knowledge. The only qualification is that one carry out devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. The Mayavadi philosophers think that without discriminating, one cannot have pure knowledge. For them, this answer is given by the Supreme Lord. Those who are engaged in pure devotional service, even though they be without sufficient education and even without sufficient knowledge of the Vedic principles, are still helped by the Supreme God, as stated in this verse. The Lord tells Arjuna that basically there is no possibility of understanding the Supreme Truth, the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, simply by speculating. for the Supreme Truth is so great that it is not possible to understand him or to achieve him simply by making a mental effort. Man can go on speculating for several millions of years, and if he is not devoted, if he is not a lover of the Supreme Truth, he will never understand Krishna or the Supreme Truth. Only by devotional service is the Supreme Truth, Krishna, pleased, and by his inconceivable energy, he can reveal himself to the heart of the pure devotee. The pure devotee always has Krishna within his heart, and with the presence of Krishna, who is just like the sun, the darkness of ignorance is at once dissipated. This is the special mercy rendered to the pure devotee by Krishna. Due to the contamination of material association, through many, many millions of births, one's heart is always covered with the dust of materialism. But when one engages in devotional service and constantly chants Hare Krishna, the dust quickly clears, and one is elevated to the platform of pure knowledge. The ultimate goal, Vishnu, can be attained only by this chant and by devotional service, and not by mental speculation or argument. The pure devotee does not have to worry about the material necessities of life. He need not be anxious, because when he removes the darkness from his heart, everything is provided automatically by the Supreme Lord, who is pleased by the loving devotional service of the devotee. This is the essence of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. By studying the Bhagavad Gita, one can become a soul completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord and engage himself in pure devotional service. As the Lord takes charge, one becomes completely free from all kinds of materialistic endeavors. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So I feel I should make a comment about our incredible turnout tonight. And it's almost like Krishna in the heart of the devotees has brought you here, because this is the fourth of the most essential verses of the Bhagavad Gita. This verse is very important, as are the next couple of verses, which we'll also read tonight. So, it's interesting that this verse came up in the class this morning, because I gave the class this morning. And what's going on in the morning class in the Bhagavatam is that the Prachetas, these some very devotional and advanced devotees of King Prachinabharhi, an ancient king who lived, millions of years ago, they met Lord Shiva. They went out to perform austerities because they're going to propagate the universe. They're going to be progenitors, or Prajapatis is called in Sanskrit. You can see the relation of the word. And so they go out, and by the transcendental arrangement, they meet Lord Shiva, and he gives them this wonderful prayer called the Song of Lord Shiva, which is completely devotional. And it shows where Shiva is really at. He's known to be the greatest devotee. Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. And he teaches them this song, which is about 30 verses long, Sanskrit. And then he said, now you go and you chant this, perform severe austerities. And actually, this is one of the many, many amazing things in the Bhagavatam. They go into the water, and underwater, you don't have to worry about breathing apparently. They chant this mantra for 10,000 years. And after 10,000 years, Vishnu appears. Underwater, up above water, doesn't matter. He appears to them on Garuda. He's got 8 arms, not 4. And all the devas are around him. We're going to read that tomorrow. And then they offer these wonderful prayers and come out, and then the pastime goes on. And what is described there in the verse that I read this morning is that he's very, very effulgent. The brilliance of his body was just very dazzling, and that was described, and they're going to remark on that. And so in the purport, Prabhupada talks about the significance of this brilliance. We have this word enlightenment, right? Everyone wants to get enlightenment, and it's understood to be spiritual. And so the whole idea here of this light is that it dissipates or destroys the ignorance that is covering the heart of the conditioned soul since time immemorial. This is what it means to be conditioned. This is what it means to suffer. We're suffering because we've forgotten everything we once knew about Krishna and devotional service and our relationship with Krishna. As soon as we turn away from Krishna, this is how we came here. we turned away from Krishna's spiritual world, that somehow or other we became envious. And we wanted to be the supreme enjoyer rather than to serve Krishna. Even though we're in a situation of great bliss there, we wanted to. So we do that, and as soon as we do that, we become absorbed in this second, this world of duality. It's described in a wonderful verse in the Bhagavad Gita, 11th canto. Bhayam. First thing is fear. Become fearful. You forget your protector. Bhayam. Vatiya madabeshataksyad. Ishara petasya viparheyo asmati. Tanmahayato buddha abajetam bhaktyakayesham guru devatatma. So what this describes is the situation of every living being in the material world. It's a state of anxiety and fear. There may be periods where you forget that and you enjoy and you think that you're in security. But there's no security here. Life is very, very tenuous. This whole plague that's come over the world in the last year or more now has been like a wake-up call, although people aren't understanding the significance, meaning how tenuous material life is. We can't be sure, of any security or any plans. Anything can be upended. Disease, accident, war. This world, dukali amashasvatam. Krishna certifies it in the 8th chapter. This world is a place of misery, and everything is temporary. That's part of the difficulty. Even if you find yourself in a secure position, you finally made it. You're in SanDiego. After a long struggle, you emigrate, and you've got a house. And you have a job, Where is the security? There's not going to. It won't last for long. It's sure not to last, sooner or later. So it's a complete illusion. So dukali mashasvatam. So this is the situation, and it becomes fearful. You become fear. Bhayam. This means fear. You're absorbed in the dualities of this world. Isha petas, turning away from the Isha, the Lord Krishna. Viparyo asmriti. Asmriti means forget. You forget everything. Does anyone here remember even their last life? What to speak of their life in the kingdom of God? Probably not. I don't see any raised hands. I don't. But we're assured in the Shastra, we were there. We've certainly had past lives in this life. But actually it's a blessing that we forgot. Can you imagine remembering all those, dangers and deaths and all those broken relationships and all that? We'd have a huge case of PTSD. We couldn't live. So that's one of the things, the supers, you forget, start anew, But the residue of those activities in life called karma is with us, and that's also determining our present and futures. All of this is going on. So what's the remedy? One has to be intelligent. This comes from tanmayayat. It's due to the influence of Maya, Krishna's Maya energy, bewildering energy, covering our true knowledge. The whole thing is knowledge and enlightenment. So one has to be Buddha. One has to be intelligent. And abhajetam, to worship that very Lord that we ignored and turned our back on, Krishna. How? Bhakti aikayesham, with pure devotion. Not with devotion that has some material motivation. Because that'll just keep us in this material world. It's pious, it's good, but because it puts one attention on Krishna. But ultimately, it needs to be selfless service. It needs to be loving service. And Guru Devatatma. We can't know any of this without a preceptor, someone who is enlightened already and who's channeling, if you will. Prabhupada called it a via media. It's a medium giving us the knowledge purely, as Srila Prabhupada does here in the Bhagavad Gita. That's why he called Bhagavad Gita as it is. Because Bhagavad Gita is such a famous book, and there are various misinterpretations and distortions that have, there's many, many translations. But this is Krishna's message as it is, and amplified and explained in a way that we can understand. So what is Krishna doing here now? Just to review these 4 verses, because they're so important. We go back to text 8, and why are these the essential verses of the Gita? Because it kind of summarizes the whole message. And we have an echo here, as we always do, of the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra, every word, every syllable counts, Veda Anta becomes Vedanta. What is Prabhupada's name? Bhakti Vedanta. We'll explain that in a minute. So Veda is knowledge in general. And Anta means the end or culmination. So the end of all search for knowledge, is what you should be looking for, what we call the absolute truth, which is defined in the 2nd sutra. Sutra simply means a little aphorism, needs explanation. The first sutra is, Tato Brahma Jigyasa. Now, therefore, Now, how do you begin a book with the word therefore? Therefore usually comes, because all the other Vedic literatures, the 4 Vedas and the Puranas and everything, leads up to this Vedanta Sutra. Now, being a human being, therefore, you should inquire into the absolute truth, Brahman. What is that? Next sutra. Janmad yasya yataha. Janma means birth, as we know from Janmashtami. Adi means etc. What comes after birth? You grow up, maintenance for a while, then you deteriorate, and you die. So it's true of anything material, whether it's this body or this temple building or this whole earth or the universe. So, yataha, from which, you should inquire into that from which or from whom everything was born, everything is maintained, and everything is ultimately destroyed. And that's, Krishna saying, that's me. That's the answer right here. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. For me, everything comes. And then the next sentence says, everything comes from me. Now, there's a slight difference here. I'm an English editor. I say, well, that sounds like redundancy. But you don't find redundancy in the Sanskrit. What it is a slight different perspective. Because we're, from Krishna's point of view, he's saying, I'm creating everything. I create everything. But we're not in Krishna's point of view. We're in our point of view. And we're confronted with everything. We don't know where it came from. I said that everything, it came from me. You see the difference? So I've created everything, and everything you see has come from me. There's no doubt about it. So this is answering the question of inquiring, what is that Brahman from which everything has come? It's Krishna. It's a person with everything we have and much more. Senses, activities, desires, relationships, a world to live in, and everything else. So that's the first part. Then the second line says, what do we do with that knowledge? Iti madva bhajante mam buddha bhava samad. One who's intelligent, knowing this, worships me. Bhajan. Bhajan means bhakti, means glorification, service. You see, with all his heart. Bhava samanvita. So as I pointed out this morning, it's very interesting that, Lord Chaitanya, who Srila Prabhupada's words is what he preached, right? Gauravani Pacharine. The same as Krishna's message, but it takes us further, even than Bhagavad Gita. So the same idea, and Lord Chaitanya in his teaching to Sanatana Goswami, which are the most thorough, if you will, detailed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says at one point, everything in the Vedas, all the Vedic knowledge, the 4 Vedas and Mahabharata, everything, all of that Vedic literature, is teaching 3 main subjects. And it's worthwhile to learn these. It's very simple. Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. And I'll define what they are. Sambandha is this question. What is this? Who am I? What is this world? Where did it all come from? What's the source? And what's the relationships between the 3? What's my actual relationship with this world? That's what sambandha means, relationship, you see. So we have to answer that question to begin, to actually make progress on our what do we call it? The quest for enlightenment. We made a book once, Prabhupada's writing, The Quest for Enlightenment. That should be the ideal or the aspiration of every human being. That's the whole point. Not to waste your time in sense gratification, which is available to the animals. This is real dharma. Without real dharma, human life is no better than animal life. So we need to have that quest for enlightenment, but we need to know how to pursue that quest. So the first thing is sambandha. And that, Krishna he's given a little sutra form here in the first line. I am the source of everything, and everything comes from me. Now you turn to this Dashamula verse by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He summarizes Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And he says, Dasha means 10. Dasha means so 10 roots of Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. Everything is there, divided into these 3, Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. So first of all, how do we know? All of this is beyond the ability of our material mind and senses to know. Well, how can we know anything? We need to have a source that is superhuman. And that's Krishna. But we can't hear Krishna directly. Even if we read Bhagavad Gita, we may get the bad commentation. So we need to have someone who can give us the Shastra, or the revealed scripture, as it is, and so that we can understand it. The first thing is the language. Prabhupada's great mercy, his first mercy, was translating this into English that we could read. And by his efforts, attracting devotees, because I'm an editor, who could, make it even more accessible for modern readers. Let's put it that way. And then from here it went to so many languages, 80, 90 different languages all over the world. But it started with Prabhupada making that effort of putting it into English, which is the order he got from his spiritual master. So that's Amnaya. The word Amnaya means the Shastra as given through the medium of merciful, compassionate acharyas who are present and have compassion for us and give it to us in a way we can understand, as it is. Okay, so then what's the answer? What are these 9? That's the first point. Then the next 9 points deal with Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. The first 7 are Sambandha. And there's one Abhideya, which is the practice, and finally the Prayojana, the final goal of life. So I'll just run through them real quick. The first point, after the Amnaya point, is that Hadamiha Padamam. Krishna is God. He's the source of everything, the exact thing we just read. But to expand on that, he's the source of all energies, you see, such as these material energies we're surrounded by. Anyone who's read in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 7th chapter, Krishna enumerates them. They're not strange to us. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, solid matter, liquids, gases, right? Radiant energy like electricity. We live with them every day. We don't even think about them. But they're Krishna's energies. They're God's energies. They don't come automatically, And they're progressively more subtle. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, which is space. Mind, our own mind is a subtle material energy. And then the intelligence is even finer, a discriminating power. And finally, the sense of self called ego. These are all part of Krishna's energies. And then there's also spiritual energies. We ourselves are spiritual. We're the particles of spirit, called the Atma, right? That's another one of Krishna's energies, called marginal, because we can go to the spirit or we can go to matter. We have that freedom. And once we go to the matter, we need help to get back to the spirit, because we get completely covered up, But we're marginal. Then there's a whole spiritual world, full of internal energies. They're also divided. I won't get into detail. This has all been explained. Ladani Shakti, Radharani is personified bliss, personified prema. Krishna's supreme pleasure energy, and there's all other spiritual energies. But Krishna isn't just a powerhouse full of all these energies. He's a person, and personhood really keys on, when you think about it, relationship. We have a relation with this body, we have a relation with other bodies, with this material world, and therefore he's Rasabdim, he's an ocean of rasa. Anyone who studies Krishna's pastimes, he has friendship relationships, we has with his mother and father as a child, filial love for them, and they have parental love for him. There's a difference. And of course he has relationship with the gopis and his queens, and there's that relationship. This is who Krishna is. He's a complete person. So that's defining the Supreme Lord. Then who are we? We're his Anksha. Because Jiva, Tadbin Anksha is separated eternally. We never merge back. We always have our identity. It may be buried in some plant body somewhere, but we're always individuals. And we're always tending to try to go back. So Tadbin Anksha Jivan, and we here have been swallowed up by the material energy. We've been covered for who knows how many millions of years in different bodies, different forms. This is what our history is. But, not to despair, some are liberated, can be liberated from this. Most of the jivas are still in the spiritual world. They never come here. We made a big mistake, and we want to try to atone for that and get back to where we belong. So then there comes this key phrase, Beta Beta Prakasham Sakalam Abhihare. This is a Chincha Beta Beta Tattva. This Lord Chaitanya's special amalgamation of all philosophies. We're not different from God, but we're not one with God. We're not the same as God. Simultaneously one and different. That's the key. Achintya Beta Beta Tattva. Inconceivably, simultaneously, different and one is actually Sanskrit. So that means that God is everywhere. We just have to train ourselves to be able to see Him. We don't see him in this material world because we're envious. We're trying to use the things of this material world for ourselves, and so he's covered. But he will reveal himself in proportion to our devotion and our selfless service. And that's what he's describing here. He destroys the ignorance in the heart with the shining lamp of knowledge in proportion to our devotion and our devotional service. So that's the process of doing that is bhakti. That's the abhideya. Sambandha of all those points. Now we have Shuddha bhakti. No material motivation, just for the pleasure of Krishna. And when we forget about our own pleasure and just simply serve Krishna, we find ourselves in bliss. That's the paradox. When we try to enjoy, we end up miserable. Because our natural position, just like the hand, the Prabhupada tells these wonderful little parables, from the Bengali, I think from Bengali culture. The senses went on strike. Those who know it. So, who's the enjoyer? Just think of eating, okay? The enjoyer is the stomach, right? He's enjoying everything. So the hand and the eye and the leg and the foot and everything, we're doing all the work, We're working, getting the money, going to the store, buying and all this stuff, And the enjoyer is the stomach. We're going on strike. So they refuse to do anything. So what happens? They can't get any food. So gradually, they all become weak. Because if you don't eat, then all your senses become weak. So they said, this is not working. We're thinking we're, getting back at the stomach, but actually we're hurting ourselves. So they go back and they're in a natural position. This is our position. We're meant to be Krishna's hands and legs, you see. And by feeding Krishna, by serving Krishna, we become blissful. It works that way. And it's not a mystery. Just like a mother, the most pure and selfless love we find in the material world is a mother's love for a little child who doesn't know, think like 2 weeks old, doesn't even know there is such a thing as a mother. Just there's this warm cloud of love that I'm living on, right? And I feel safe, and then there's this nourishment, this big source of nourishment here, and that's it. But on the mother's side, she's just happy if the child is happy and healthy and safe. And then she becomes, it's not that, all right, I'll suckle you provided that you do the A, B, C, and D. It's not like that. It's just selfless, right? And she'll even risk her life or give her life for the life of the child. So that's the nearest thing. But again, it's in the material world. It only lasts so long. The child grows up and, at a certain point moves away and the relationship changes and, So that's the relationship with Krishna, the healthy relationship. And he's responsive, as he says here. This is why these 4 verses give us some Bandha Abhideya Prayojana in a nutshell. Because what is Krishna saying in the last 2 verses? First of all, he says, just to summarize, I'm the source of everything. Everything comes from me. The wise who know this well worship me with all their hearts. How do they do it? Machitta margata prana. They think of me. They devote their lives to my service. And they get together and glorify me, and in this way they enjoy like anything. Tushyanti chadamanti. Because we're part and parcel of Krishna, when we glorify Krishna, we're also getting the benefit. We're also, without trying for it. They come together and in this way they enjoy. And that's the essence of kirtan. There's such a wonderful kirtan culture that's developed over the years. Kirtan melas. Devotees will sit for hours and chant and not get tired. How is that? The same mantra, from the outside, be like, what are you guys, nuts? Don't you get tired of that song? I remember we were on Sankirtan sometimes. Most of you know what Sankirtan is, right? So we're downtown, this was a couple of years ago. And we're chanting. We stopped on a corner, one of the main corners. We had a party, maybe 12, 15 devotees, And we had this big sign that was made by Yamunapati. A little heavy, but holding the sign, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And some homeless guy comes up, Couldn't take it. He punches the sign. And then he realizes he's kind of outnumbered, so he runs away, This, he actually put a hole in the, and because it's completely how is it working? This same mantra, the same word, this is because it's Krishna. This is because Krishna never gets old. You never get satiated. This is the difference between material happiness and spiritual happiness. Material happiness depends on the senses, which are very limited. You can only enjoy so much, and then if you try to keep enjoying, you're going to suffer like anything. Whereas transcendental happiness and bliss, you may get tired because the body, it can keep going, but the soul never gets tired. You never think, that's it, that's enough. I've had enough of Krishna. Can I hear something? Not for any sincere devotee. There's always more. There's always more service. There's always more to hear and to glorify about Krishna. I'll give you an example. Okay, I'm not a pure devotee, but by Krishna's grace, by some good fortune, I developed an attachment for some of the Sanskrit shlokas that were written by our great acharyas. Let's put it that way, Rupa Goswami especially. It's a long story how I came in touch with them like 40 years ago when I was in LA in 78, 43 years ago. And there was a devotee there who was a genius in Sanskrit. It was amazing. For 20 years, that's all he did was translate. And the first thing he translated was Stavamala, which is Rupa Goswami's, an anthology of his poems, Anyway, so I was like, keep going, Krishna is with Krishna Krata. So recently, there's so many of them. I memorized them, and some of them, they sink into the unconscious. So someone reminded me of a couple of ones, and I'll just share them with you. And these, if you learn these, if you can relish these, it's the aesthetics. Krishna's Vidagda. Is one of his qualities. Vidagda Prabhupada defines in the Nectar of Devotion. He lives at the highest level of, how does he put it? I forget it, but the idea is that he, dressed perfectly, speaking perfectly. He's all attractive in so many ways. So this Sanskrit, it embodies some of that. So here's some of the verses that I recently rediscovered, just one or two. It says, Spuridindi vidasunda dasanda tadanda the kundali kunda mantavapada vinde nandaya gandhi na govinda. Now, because you don't understand the meaning, maybe not, but just listen to the sound. There's in Sanskrit the ND combination, as in the word Ananda, or Krishna's name. Some of you may know Nanda Nandana. This is evocative of bliss. And so many of the verses you find, they have a lot of these NDs in them. So this is one of them. So what this verse means is Spurit Individa. It means he's manifesting this color of a fresh Indivira lotus, which is, one of the many words for lotus in Sanskrit, and it has a beautiful bluish color. Maybe I'll bring my Indian flowers from my Indian flowers website that I found that has the Indivira, on there. It's very beautiful. So Krishna has this complexion, Spurit Indivira Sundara, very beautiful. Sandratanananda, intense bliss. Kundali Kunda, he's the root of the plant of intense happiness, intense bliss. Sandratanananda Kundali. Mantava Paradabinde, O Lord. Mantava Paradabinde Nandaya Gandena Govinda. O Govinda, please delight me with the fragrance of your lotus feet. You can pray like that, So that verse, you could chant it 10 times. You're not going to get tired. It's a wonderful meditation. Prabhupada, you listen to him, sing the Govinda prayers. Chintamani pakadasad, very slow, relishing every meaning. Chintamani pakadasad masukalpa vriksha lakshavati susurabhir habipalayantam. Just through this sound, you're evoking a whole world there. And this is not something alien to us. I remember when I was in 8th grade, long before I knew anything about Krishna, I was a total atheist. I like to point this out. I was raised as an Orthodox communist. Yeah. My father, anyway, it goes a long way back into the 30s and 40s. But so, there's no question of God in that. But I had a good, little elementary education. At that time, it was better than it is now. And so we read various books, and one of the ones was Dickens, I think Little Nell or something like that. It wasn't one of the classics. But did I get into that book? And these guys, really skilled, these great writers, in evoking the mood and describing the persons, and it creates a whole world. And I entered into that world, And then little Nell, she was just a little innocent little girl. I think she dies at the end. And tears are flowing down my eyes. I had to write a report, So what I'm getting at, even on the material side, what to speak of all the movies and everything, they create emotions in you. You forget yourself, and you identify with someone there, and you root for the hero. If you're, otherwise if you're demonic, you root for the other guy. But whatever it is, you get absorbed. So when the subject matter and the description is of Krishna's and Krishna's pastimes and all of this, then you can become completely purified. Otherwise it just deepens your involvement in matter, the modes of nature. So our acharyas, great writers like Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and so many others, extraordinary Sanskrit scholars, and they applied it all to glorifying Krishna. So this one verse just enlivened me, And then I discovered the songs of Jiva Goswami in the Gopal Champu, just describing Krishna and Balaram coming back from the forest after this Dhenukasura pastime. Those who know Krishna Lila, it has all the rasas in there. They're with their friends, Sakya Ras. They come back, and on the way in, the gopis are greeting them, and they're looking at the gopis. There's that rasa, and then they're with their friends, Sakya Ras, and of course parental rasa is there with their parents. So they come in, and Krishna and Balaram come in at home, and then the song describing it. It's a very simple song, but the Sanskrit, Rama, Harina, Halina, Sahatapadalina, Rajani, Mukamana, Janani, Lada, Mitikalitam, Jitakalina. You can hear the beat and the rhyme. So what it means is, Harina is Hari, that's Krishna. Halina is Balaram, who carries a plow. See? Who's Harina, Halina, Sahadapadalina, with Balaram, who rips apart his enemies. Ripudalina. Rajani Mukam, when the face of night came, that's the evening time. Rajani Mukam. Then the Janani, the mother Yashoda, she greeted them back home, and she pampered them in various ways. And so the first verse describes that. Nirmanchana nirajana marjana vadana lokana rajanam mardana madana samvastrakanat pushchad pundrika sachanam. So this describes Nirmanchana. I had to research to find out what this meant. This is a preparation for arti. So he has the little two boys come home, and she performs a little arti ceremony. Incense, little lamp. Read that in the Bhagavatam. This is, further. And then Nirajana, Marjana, then she wipes them down because they're full of the dust, and everything. She gives them a quick wipe down. Samvastrana, Nirmanchana Nirajana Marjana Vadanalokana Rachanam. And then she looked at their faces, with great love, and then see that they're fine, And then Mardana, massage. Marjana, full immersion in a bath, naturally. Then she dresses them, in pajamas, because they're getting ready to go to bed. First they'll have dinner, then they'll go to bed. And then she put on the tilak. So it describes all these wonderful details. So what I'm saying is that there's unlimited opportunity to, what to speak of Prabhupada's books, reading Krishna book, and all these things, it's all there. To immerse ourselves in this world and become part of it again. That's where we belong. And it's ever fresh. Here I am, it's like 48 years down the road, chanting the same mantra, reading the same Krishna book, thinking about the same person. It's not old, I can assure you. I don't feel 73 years old. My body is starting to, feel 73. But I'm not 73. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. So, back to the verse at hand. So Krishna is saying, Anukampa, right? Out of compassion. Now I dealt with this, I'm giving some of the same things I gave this morning. But what is kampa? Kampa is one of the ecstatic symptoms, right? It's the trembling. That's the trembling. So anukampa means trembling in sympathy with others. It's like a sympathetic string on a tambura or a sitar. You just vibrate one string and another string, vibrates. So this anukampa, this is what compassion is all about. You're feeling others' pain, and so you're doing something about it. That's a connection there. And there's a very close relation between compassion and love. Think about it, So Krishna, out of love, he's responding, and this is the prayojana. The prayojana is feeling love for Krishna and feeling his love for us. This is what it's all about. Agyana Jantamaha. This darkness is born of ignorance. For many, many years we've been covered over. So Krishna within the heart is dissipating. We're on page 433. Destroys that darkness, Atma Bhavasto, which is situated within the heart. What is this with the shining lamp of knowledge? And Prabhupada makes the point, even if you're illiterate, even if you don't know anything, if you're faithfully serving, you'll be enlightened from within by Krishna. And really the way it works most practically is that devotees who don't know anything about Krishna, but they chant Hare Krishna and they get a little attracted, then Krishna from within, he gives them the impetus to buy a book, come to the temple. In other words, get knowledge. That's how it develops. So Krishna, he's the one who's working from within, and that's right there in the Bhagavatam. If you just listen to Krishna, Shunvatam Sukata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana, which gives you auspiciousness just by hearing it, then Krishna from within, Vidunoti, he cleanses away all of the dust and the dirt in your heart that's been accumulating for lifetimes. Because he is the best well-wisher of his devotees, Surit Satam. So we should come into that orbit of being devotees, even if it's just very rudimentary. And from within, Krishna will give us more and more enlightenment. That's how it works. From within and without. From the books, from the guru, from the sadhus, and from within. Krishna wants us to come back. He never forgets us. Why else would he take the trouble of accompanying us lifetime after lifetime as a super soul? It's we who are stubbornly trying to enjoy this way and that way and prolonging our sentence in this prison house. Okay, any questions on this verse? I've kind of gone on a long time, but it's worth it. This verse is all right. We should read the next one too, because this is Arjun's response to what Krishna says. We have something? We have a mic? Okay, go ahead. Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Please accept my humble obeisances, Prabhuji. This question is about, you were saying that, we were with us in the spiritual world with Krishna and then we fell from there. And also I remember this verse when he says, Yad Gatvana Nivartande Tadhama Paramam Mama. So these two, I have a difficulty understanding these two together. So we were there and we fell, and then if we go there, we never come back. So
in other words, what I'm getting is, because I don't know if it's my ears or the electronics, it's hard to understand your accent. How did we fall? Why did we fall? And if we fell, then why would we ever? Is that what you're asking? In other words, how did we come to this material world? Yes. Okay. So then, so if you go back, and you'll never fall, then why would we ever fall in the first place? This is the classic question, right? And so, the answer is, there's no ultimate answer. How did that happen? Prabhupada always says somehow or other. Because what's the alternative? We were always here, right? Now we know that there's the spiritual world, right? Is that what you say? Is that the basic question? How did we fall from the spiritual world? Does that make sense? In other words, if we go and don't come back, why would we ever leave in the first place? Right? Okay, that's a classic question. And yeah, and so Prabhupada's answer to that was that we have minute independence. If we didn't have minute independence, he would point to the end of the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, Yatechasita Takuru. Now that I've spoken this Bhagavad Gita, now you do what you want. I'm not going to force you. So it's still up to Arjuna. And Arjuna says, yes, I will do as you say. My illusion has been destroyed by your mercy. I'll act. So he made the decision. So that you do as you want has to be always there. Why? Because Krishna wants one thing. The only thing that we have that he wants is our love. And love means freely given. Prabhupada famously said, Krishna doesn't want us to love him at the point of a revolver. That's not love. That's coercion, you see? So Krishna takes a chance meaning that, okay, so all of these countless friends and cows and gopis and everything, they have freedom to love me or not. Now, the ones who are there, they're nityasiddha, they never leave, so they always are situated. But having that freedom, we can also somehow or other get that sense of envy of Krishna. And Prabhupada even described it once Krishna tried to convince us not to come, and we stubbornly, refused his implications, and we came. So because there's minute independence, there will be those who were a minority, 1/4 or something of the living, who make the bad decision. But Krishna doesn't abandon us. He stays with us as a super soul. He comes himself to speak books like Bhagavad Gita. Periodically comes himself. He always has some emissary in the world who we can turn with. But this is a very fortunate time, this particular Kali Yuga, because this is once in a day of Brahma, which is over 8 billion years long. Once every day of Brahma, Krishna comes as himself, and after he comes as Lord Chaitanya to teach the most easy and efficacious and blissful process of devotional service, Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan. And so we're living in that Kali Yuga now. And just yesterday, in terms of these vast times, Brahma's day and everything, Lord Chaitanya was here, in an historical account. So we have this opportunity to turn back to Krishna. And why won't we come back again? Krishna promises, once you go, you won't come back again. Because probably, it's the old thing of once burned, twice shy. Even though we won't be dwelling on our, and remembering and, checking our, our iPhones, you'll get all the pictures from the times when we're here, when we're back there. We'll have the sense of, I made that mistake once, I'm not making it again. Once burned, twice shy. There's a little, one of these mottos in English, So that's the only answer. Somehow or other, we made that mistake and turned to Krishna. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you very much, Prabhuji. Very well explained.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if you're interested, you send me an email. There's a letter that Prabhupada wrote, a little essay called the Crow and Tal Food Essay. You'll find out why it's called that, which he explains, he answers this question. I'll send it to you, okay?
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
And there's a whole book by Dravida Karma about it. So, yes, go ahead. One more, and then we have to adjourn for Arti. Go ahead. Take that. You can take the mask off, but also speak into the mic so people can hear. You can take the mask off.
I just wanted to understand the definition of Amnaya.
Yeah.
You mentioned, so is it Amnaya is written by self-realized souls, or how do I understand?
Amnaya is the truths of the revealed scriptures, such as Bhagavatam and Gita, as transmitted through the disciplic succession of realized souls, like we have our, the Mahajans and our Acharyas. Those together make the Amnaya. So when we find, a statement from Prabhupada, which will always be in tune with the Shastra, but he'll give it in such a way just so we can understand. So that's Amnaya. Beyond the 4 defects, that's the sound. That's how we rely on information of the things beyond our, which is a Paurusheya. It's superhuman activities and things. We need that. So it's both. It's the Shastra coming through the disciplic succession.
So how do we define Agama then? Agamas are...
What is that?
Agama?
Agama.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the Vedas, isn't it? I'm not.
But what little I heard is that it describes the rules and regulations, but it is not written by it's not like Vedas written by Apaurusheya, but it just comes from the acharyas, contemporary acharyas who are there. They describe the practical aspects of
Yeah, well, for each time and place, there it has to be given in such a way that people can relate to it and enter into it. So you'll find variations, but the same basic truths have to be there behind it. In other words, it may be a certain thing that you're doing to bring you to the point of understanding the Vedas and understanding Krishna's God, and he may have different names, he certainly does have different names for different activities, and be known in different ways in different societies. But it's the same person, and they're that teaching which aligns most closely to the revealed scriptures that we have coming, the Vedas and so forth that I mentioned. That can be relied on as Amnaya. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he took the essence out of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna himself, and gave us the Gaudiya conclusion. Okay, it's late. We need to adjourn. Please stay for Artik. Thank you all for coming, and for our attendees online. Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. And we'll resume these classes on Monday if you're interested, either live or online.